Welcome to the podcast designed to fuel your success selling technology solutions. I'm your host, Josh Lopresto, SVP of Sales Engineering at Teleris, and this is Next Level Biz Tech. Hey everybody, welcome back. We got a hot track here for you today. We're talking about a whole bunch of tech stack here. Today, it's Azure at the edge, IBM in the basement, which is where they always are, and databases everywhere. Talking about the signals to change. On with us today, we got Ron Colbert of RLM. Ron, welcome on, man.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me.
Excited to get into this. These are some fun tracks, and it's not stuff that we could talk about in the channel, 5+ years ago. So let's jump in. Maybe before we do, a little bit about who you are, your background, right? You spent a lot of time in this space. So just tell us you personally. We'll get to RLM here in a second, but just, you and your experience personally.
Yeah, sure. So I started out in a small engineering firm in Atlanta, Georgia. At least, this my part of this career in 2001, and I was working for this really talented group as a sales professional, just kind of getting started in my career, and really talented leadership and really great delivery team. About 35 employees at the time, and we had a small little data center facility that we would sell into. We had a professional services team and a support organization. And I think the first sale I ever made there was a hosted Navision server running with Citrix, and it was a couple of servers running in the data center, and we didn't call it cloud, we didn't call it managed services, but I was I was in a what you'd consider a VAR reseller, but the services and things that I really gravitated toward were always in the recurring services programs. We had a few channel relationships. We were a Bell South agent, and we were also an AT&T Alliance channel partner. And so, I was sort of I had quite a few things that I could work with as far as providing solutions to clients, and having such a talented group of engineers. I really got a good education on how to work through project. It was an engineering led company, and so I really gained quite a bit working with that team. And I think I worked with a couple of clients, straight channel opportunities, probably in 2004 to 2006 timeframe. I brought a couple customers over to AT&T, and I got a pretty good understanding of that and that background. But I really combined that sort of VAR professional services when the economy just fell apart in 2008 and 9, and nobody was really buying anything.
Yeah.
I remember I spent a lot of time training to learn the Cisco Call Manager platform, and I was really invested in that. I was spending a lot of time at the Cisco office, and nobody wanted to buy it because the economy was such trash at the time. And I started looking at redesigning, re-architecting telecom services for clients. And okay, I remember I had a big moment with a customer in 2009 that I looked at their spend. They had I don't want to age myself here, but they had an IP enabled frame relay network, and they had PRI, and they had all this, just things that give you, shivers. And I looked at all of it, put it all, organized it all, and came back to them a week later and said, "You're spending about $40,000 a month with your current services. If we redesign this and had a blank sheet of paper, I can bring that down to 20,000. But you got to buy this call manager solution that I want to sell you. I put it into a monthly lease, and let's call it $10,000. I'm going to pay you $10,000 a month to give you a brand new phone system and a brand new network." And I started doing that and sort of combining these two worlds. And I got the sale, and I got to do the thing that I wanted, but it really planted a seed in my head of the potential, the capability, and the sort of um, the opportunity that exists in the channel industry. Like that background really helped shape kind of where I took things into the the later part of my career journey with that organization.
I love it. And you take it into consideration now where the TSD channel is to where maybe back then maybe you had, 20 products to sell. Now you've got 400. So the rules have not yet been fully written on what you can combine, what you can bundle, how that would cost save. So now it's just, open up. It's, I guess, for better or for worse, it's like the cheesecake factory of menu options. So now the possibilities are even bigger, right?
Yeah, it is. It's and it feels like it gets bigger every quarter. It's really exciting. I love some of the organizations that have entered the channel, and it is really sort of determine what areas do you want to focus on, and there's a dozen or more legitimate competitors in each of those areas that could fit any client need. It's really that's. I was talking to a customer yesterday. It's you almost become a professional shopper for
Yeah.
for what a specific set of needs are.
Yeah. That's a new, I haven't heard that one. I like it.
Yeah.
So let's look at RLM, right? You've got this org. Help us understand a little bit about who RLM is. What's different, how you approach some of these cloud and infrastructure sales. How do you engage? Just give us a little bit of an RLM commercial.
Sure, sure. We all came from the data center side of the world, and we focus on almost exclusively on enterprise organizations. So we take on only a few clients per year. A lot of us have, I've got 25 years in selling IT solutions. My two partners are both 30 years each, veterans. So we do have long standing relationships with our clients. But I think the key that of what we do is really fully immerse ourselves to understand what is a challenge that a client is up against. Like what are they trying to achieve? I've sat on um, I've sat on probably 10 different IT steering committees for customers, sitting alongside them, helping them to develop strategies that will inform decisions as we go into different project areas. What are we trying to, where are we today? Where are we trying to go tomorrow? How are we going to get there is really, what informs the strategy. And we'll get email addresses with our on our clients' domains. We'll work truly like within there. If there are resources needed, we provide the resources. Like it may sound a little bit much, but this true partnership model requires that we make investments that we sort of win and lose together with the customer. And if you go full immersion into it, it's often rewarded where we don't really have competition. We help sort of shape the strategy. I've run RFPs that I've written. I facilitate and I make my recommendation. I certainly give the client the opportunity to make a decision. I've never had a circumstance where they've not taken that guidance. It's if you go through that whole process, there's a trust there.
Yeah, you put the work in. I mean, I want to say it's high risk, high reward, but if you're being selective on who you take on, to your earlier point, then it's just risk equals reward. It's not high
Right.
risk.
Yeah, it's your time has cost, and certainly you want to make sure that you have a shared set of goals, and you can sort of qualify and vet that out, on the front end. But a lot of times it's kind of a no brainer for us to dive in with our client and you can do the math. It's rewarding over time.
Yeah. All right, one more quick question, and then we're going to get into some of these kind of Azure and database and IBM, tech stack here. So just a lot of good experience, lessons learned. I love this question. Give me an example of something that you learned along the way, either from a great mentor or some major mistake that you made. And what's something that you've tried to carry with you throughout.
Oh gosh. So yeah, it's always tough. I mean, I've made so many mistakes along the way. It's a lot of times what I try and do as we go into a project is really set the goal and then work backward from that, whatever that timetable is. But just with everything today is so interdependent on other service providers. There's so many factors to transitioning a client, and as you've spoken about in some of your previous episodes, the software rules everything, and I weigh out business goals and certainly contracts that clients have, and you know all of those factors can impact when a decision has to be made, and as you go past those timetables, it puts things at risk. I mentioned that call manager example earlier. I built this entire thing around one of the early lessons I learned in that project was sometimes when you're ordering fiber services, it can take a long time to get installation, and if you couple things wrong, it can kill all the momentum of a project because we're waiting on this one little thing. I actually got us into a Starlink early because of a network project about 3 years ago that went sideways when we had to cut open a parking lot for a customer to install some services, and I went ahead and just bought a Starlink kit, a business grade Starlink kit, put it on the roof, and just gave it to the customer for 6 months while they waited for this installation to occur. And that's a somewhat recent example, but how are we addressing those problems that have come up along the way? And it's creativity that we had to come up with and work around, but definitely had some lumps along the way here.
Fair. All right. Let's shift gears here. Let's talk about Azure, right? I mean, you think about, you guys have. I love the angle that you have coming from the data center side. So, Microsoft comes along. Microsoft over the last number of years has built up the Azure cloud infrastructure, and I mean that's a big thing, right? A lot of products in there. So specifically, they come out with Azure Local, and so for people that aren't familiar, Azure Local is the same. AWS has this. They have AWS Outposts. Azure Local is, hey, you're going to get the same tech stack that Azure uses in their cloud that you normally get on your layer of orchestration. You get into your GUI, you command the interface, you build out, you get IPs, you get apps, all that good stuff. Take a subset of that, and for a better use case, a better business case, maybe it makes sense to put a little bit of that on-prem. And so, things like that are out there now that this stuff like this wasn't available in the channel in years past. And so, as you think about how you're helping people build out infrastructure, sometimes it's Azure, sometimes it's Azure Local. Is it hybrid? Is it full private cloud? Give us an example where you've gone through something like that. What were you solving for? Is it latency? Is it compliance? Is it resiliency? Just walk us through kind of how you think through that.
Yeah, sure. It's interesting. Microsoft is the king of repackaging a product, and sort of they have these major enhancements, and they'll almost re-release the same product. They went through it with LCS into OCS into Link into Teams, and they went through it with Terminal Server into RDS, and today we have what started out as Azure Arc became Azure Stack HCI, became Azure Local. It's some derivative of Hyper-V coupled with Azure, but it's this really neat alternative today to running Broadcom. Where a client might be dealing with some of the challenges that have come from Broadcom. if they need to run low latency workloads, manufacturing is an easy example to share where you might have a workload that has to be on premise within a facility that's driving machinery or equipment, and those sub 5 millisecond workload needs, or whatever crazy fast connections are required, is one thing. One of the projects that we recently did was to help a client figure out a path to upgrade their domain version. So they had these old custom applications on the plant floor that had to continue, but they're running on Windows Server 2003,
Yeah.
and their domain version is 2008 R2, and it's like a boat anchor.
Yeah.
You can't escape it. And so what we came up with was, can we put Azure Local on premise and then create a bubble domain around that, microsegment into it, which would really isolate that old server off of the enterprise network and give them a path to upgrade the domain version. And in doing so, we were able to give them a hardware refresh. We were able to solve this domain issue and allow them to enhance their security posture. And so that's a not an uncommon thing. Is how do you address you know Broadcom quintupled the pricing of their licensing. They've done what they've done, and that's great. It's That's their business to make those choices. But clients that are Microsoft centric may be apprehensive to train up on a Nutanix or SimpliVity, or some of the more obscure hypervisor platforms. They're comfortable and familiar with the Azure portal, the features like you mentioned, those some of those PaaS features like managed SQL instance. I know we'll get into database here in a sec, but like being able to extend down some of the PaaS capabilities from Azure on premise can greatly reduce the administrative overhead and burden. Leveraging some of the backup capabilities that come with Azure. Once you deploy this Azure local workload, you have a lot of capabilities that you didn't previously have when you're running just this standalone island of compute. And it's an interesting development. I think Microsoft, certainly they're in competition with AWS and Google all the time. I do think they might have a slight jump on those two as far as where they are right now with this local deployment.
Seems like it. Yeah, and it seems like too. It's been productized and enunciated a little bit better, right? And they're chasing after all these kind of buckets of marketing funds to help play out some of the costs of the POCs, and so it's just interesting to see everybody kind of run against each other. But yeah, I'm with you. Microsoft's done a good job there.
I will say, you mentioned a GUI. They don't have a GUI installation process yet, which I look forward to seeing that at some point. It's a tricky process to get a piece of equipment certified and transitioned into production. But as Microsoft keeps developing updates, maybe by the time this episode comes out, they'll have something. But it's today it's a lot of command line and a lot of trial and error to get a
Yeah.
new workload built.
Get real good with PowerShell. All those days of Linux and Ubuntu and all that stuff, it pays off one way or another, right? It's the
That's
right
right.
muscle memory. It all translates. You learn a language, it translates a little bit over to another language. So,
Right.
all right, let's talk about database. You and I were talking a little bit before we started recording. I mean, this database as a service, this just wasn't even a thing in the channel years ago. We said, Mr. Mrs. Customer, we can help you with infrastructure. This is great. We got a lot of private clouds. We can help you with VMware, all these things. Now here we are with database as a service, right? So just like it seems like everything else, customers struggle to find and keep good people. They, lose some of that talent, or how do they scale? And scaling databases, that's its own monster, right? Um, walk Walk me through a little bit of now this is a thing. It's been a thing for a little while in the channel. Where do you see people needing help from a database perspective? And then how do we assist here?
Sure, sure. Yeah, I mean, a huge problem within enterprise America today is sprawl. It's a security risk. It's an administrative burden. Spinning up a new database server to spin up a new application is costly and licensing. There's so many compounding challenges with adding databases within an organization that you really do need to look at, building a single cluster or multiple clusters, or leverage these platform as a service, these database as a service platforms that kind of build in that automation, the monitoring, the backup, the administration. A lot of those things sort of come naturally when you get into a platform as a service, where if you're running a standalone database server, the cost in licensing, the cost in administrative burden and DBA services to ensure that that is performing and functioning at all times. It's like, I look at how companies used to run their own exchange server, and it was just sort of the way you did it. But then, Office 365 comes along, and it doesn't make any sense for anybody to run a standalone exchange server unless you've got really specific regulatory needs or some specific use case where, okay, through an exception, it makes sense to do this. I think, 5, 10 years from now, there will be far fewer standalone databases because of all the risks and all the costs.
Yeah, it's interesting, to be able to say, Mr. Customer, what are you working on, right? What's the project that you have? Is this an infrastructure project? Is this a software and application RFQ? Or who's managing and maintaining the database, and to be able to just come back to that and say like, oh, we've got SQL, or oh, we've got Aurora, or oh, we've got Postgres or whatever. Great. How are you managing it? How's it going? How's it scalable? How do you do that in downtime? How do you do that after hours? We can help you with that. Can we augment with
Right,
that? So it's so refreshing to just see this portfolio continually expand, to your point, because it's getting harder. It's getting harder and hard to find the right people.
right.
All right, let's get to something that maybe we're just going to be talking about this for like the next 50 years, because I'm so surprised that we still even talk about IBM. But I had heard that there are roughly 75 to 100,000 AS400s still out there. So, first of all, this could even be its own episode. But um, talk to me about the state of IBM workloads in the enterprise, and just any stories that you've got about modernizing, and kind of what we've learned, what's possible, what we can sell, all that good stuff.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I mean, speaking of databases, talk about a rock solid platform. IBM, the AS400, which is now called Power I. At some point in the middle, it was called I Series, but it's the same thing, right? But it's a piece of server hardware with a purpose-built operating system that was designed for it, right? And in fact, IBM has been using the same name. It's IBM operating system, or iOS, and it's very similar to your Apple iPhone in that it's hardware with a purpose-built operating system, and it's extremely stable. You see the green screens at retail facilities; they're interacting with that that IBM gear back in the data center, and most most organizations still operate these, and a lot of times it runs the database for the most important business application that they have. Um, a lot of the equipment is, sitting in the back of the server room, and it's run by the guy that nobody ever talks to, and he just does his job. The challenges with all of these things are, IBM hardware and software maintenance continues to get more expensive. That workforce is largely retiring. There's a ton of those IBM administrators that are reaching the end of their career, and so it's a challenge that many organizations face. We're running, an ERP platform, and the database happens to be on an IBM mid-range. It's on an AIX Unix machine, or it's on an IBM I series, and they need to find a home for it. Because the hardware reaches the end of its life, and so what options are there? There are lots of them in the market. A lot of times, this conversation starts with build me a disaster recovery system, because you used to just buy two systems and mirror them, and you can do that with backups, or you can use replication software, but it would be a one-to-one relationship. Just buy two of them and stand them up. Well, disaster recovery becomes sort of low-hanging fruit. You can, in the world of x86, you have virtual machines. In the world of IBM, you have LPARs, or logical partitions. And so you have these virtual slices of a larger IBM system, and they just a provider would make them available. And so it's like you don't have to go fully cost burden your workload into a standalone piece of equipment. All the maintenance costs are lower when you divide it out across a larger system. And so, you can begin replicating from a standalone physical machine into just an LPAR at a provider environment. And then as time goes on, you can easily, we have several providers that offer the managed services and administration. So that can address that sort of retiring workforce challenge. And then, certainly the production hosting. But in almost all cases, those are you're moving into modern hardware with just whatever the sizing needs to be, and it's no different than your infrastructure as a service play. But as you probably know, moving a database into another data center, you got to move what's along with it. And I've gone through. We just finished a project to migrate a JD Edwards environment. It had an IBM I series production, a dev test, and then there were about 60 Windows servers that interacted with that one I series, right?
Dependency
All
mapping, baby. Oh yeah, that's
and
terrifying.
and then at each of the remote sites, there were a SQL server that was also connected
Ugh.
into this environment. So we had this huge orchestra of servers and services that were, all of them were interacting, and it took about 9 months of planning. We migrated it, everything tested out successfully, and we got to abandon this old piece of equipment. And that was a big win, and but it can be a challenge for all the reasons, and all of those conversations need to involve what are we trying to solve here. And in that case, that was EOL equipment. It was everything was end of support, and we had to modernize, and so we abandoned a Power 8 system, and we moved into a Power 10 system. And in doing so, we took a pretty big step up in the hardware infrastructure.
Yeah, maybe I don't know. Maybe we'll still be doing this 5+ years, 10 years. We're still cranking on IBMs, man. It just won't die.
It feels like I mean they've still got a relevant market position. I don't know if people are jumping into buying IBM out of the gate, but if kicking the can down the road means market opportunity.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's funny how many people in some of these IBM discussions are like, okay, yeah, we'll move this, we'll lift it, we'll shift it, help us with that. That's scary. And then yeah, we've got these 200 applications. We're going to do application refactoring over time, and then you snap back 24 months later, and you're like, two things have been refactored, and they're just ready for another refresh. And you're like, I get it. It's application and dependency mapping is hard and scary, and production equals revenue, so don't screw it up. So hey,
yeah,
got to
every
support it.
every time I've ever been asked if I can host an IBM workload for 2 years while we refactor to Linux, I'm in 100% of the time. Yes,
Oh,
no
oh
problem.
yeah, oh yeah. All right, we'll get to the final couple thoughts here. I want to maybe wrap us one or two ideas here. First off, just discovery calls. Like as you're getting into things that you think might, you want to get to what's the Azure situation, you want to get to what's the database, you want to get to is there IBM. I mean, what's you doing specific kind of discovery calls and processes and discovery questions related to that, or what's Ron's favorite approach here that's worked well?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm up on a soapbox or anything, but it's like I always start with why. There's a great book called Start with Why, and you just want to understand what it is we're trying to solve. I've probably asked the same question 10,000 times. What problem are we solving? And I'll ask it to challenge people. I'll ask it to open up a discussion, but really. If you distill down all these wonderful things that we can offer, all the services that we can provide, they're just tools in a tool bag. And at the end of the day, it's really on us to decide what's the right tool for the job. But what is the job? Like what are we trying to achieve? And I've spent a lot of time with clients trying to sort of coach them through, don't everybody likes to shop, and people love to they read an article. I don't know how many CIOs have read a industry magazine article and gotten excited about something. VDI was a thing in every magazine for 10 years straight, and it just didn't have its moment until about maybe 5 years ago at the beginning of COVID. And we finally got past some of the licensing challenges of Microsoft. But it's like, okay, well, what problem are we solving? Truly understand that. And then if we can take a step past that, like what are the measurements of success for a project, and how will we evaluate ourselves as we go through this? And I've spoken with clients where we've started down a journey, and maybe the provider we chose initially wasn't the perfect fit 2 years later. That's okay. We're maybe taking your maturity level 1 up to a maturity level 2. Your expectations have changed. You're now seeing this a little bit more clearly, and it's okay to in this journey that we might need to evolve what we're shooting for. And so that's it's always been around being client focused, really trying to understand what the business is up against.
I love it. Final thoughts here. We put a bow on this with the modernization. We're doing all this modernization, and then along comes AI and says we're the new greatest thing that's going to solve everything and everywhere. I mean, how do you factor in some of those trends? Do you think about your deals and your conversations with customers and you're in infrastructure and beyond? How do you get excited about that? How do you kind of ground people to that? What's the most important thing here?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many areas that AI is influencing the world right now, and there's a lot to be excited about. I've got several projects right now that are trying to automate or provide better accuracy for of various business functions. I think AI ops has a lot to offer. In the future, I do think that there's companies today that are advertising root cause analysis on every single ticket, and the world of operations is going to be impacted by AI. And it's not the sexy chatbot stuff. It's really just looking at numbers and ticket notes and pairing things together. And there's a lot to it. I think it's always important to distinguish AI versus BI. I know a lot of executives have had these grand ideas about How can I see my data and really understand, where my organization is trending, and I think some of that crosses the boundary line into business intelligence. And it's, as we go through this evolution, it's, to my earlier comment about maturity. I had a client this week say that they're deploying a new RFI for an AI project that started a year and a half ago. They rolled out an HR chatbot, and the CEO of the company logged into it, looked up his own name, and it didn't know anything about him. And he said, "Give me a new AI platform." And it's like, well, maybe that wasn't part of the criteria, maybe it was, but it's the expectations are certainly evolving in this space so quickly, and the line is going to continue to increase. I do think that it's going to influence every one of our provider options. It's like how it's going to evolve. I think there's a lot of good things that are coming from it, for sure.
It's a fun time to be in tech, man. Holy cow. You just, with all this complexity, we just keep more and more value. People just need more help. And I think we take for granted. I mean, I have to self-check on this, that, we take for granted some of these decisions that we help people make. This might be the first time that they've ever made it or ever will make it in their career. And we've done it, 10 times by 4 p.m. And so that's so much help. I think it's all about help. We can help people through these decisions. So I love
Yeah.
that. Love the path. Appreciate you coming on, man. I'm questioned out. It's been a lot of good stuff that you've shared, and thanks for coming on and dropping some knowledge with us, man.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me on. This has been great.
Awesome. All right, everybody. That wraps us up for today. As always, these drop every Wednesday. So wherever you're coming to us from, Spotify, Apple Music, wherever it is, make sure that you're subscribing so you get these notifications as soon as they pop up. Until next time, that wraps us up for today. It's been Ron Colbert, RLM Solutions. I'm your host, Josh Fresco, SVP of Sales Engineering at Telarus. We talked Azure, IBM, and databases and the signal to change. Until next time.
Next Level BizTech has been a production of Telarus Studio 19. Please visit Telarus.com for more information.